Welcome, everyone. This is the Nuxeo and Codenvy webinar, Automating Developer Workspace Construction for the Nuxeo Platform. My name is Brad Mickley. I'm the COO of Codenvy, and with me today is Sun Tan, who's a developer here at Codenvy, and Vladimir Pasquier. I apologize, Vladimir, if I mispronounced your last name, who works with Nuxeo. So we're going to start with some introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about the developer environment configuration problem. We're going to show how Codenvy factories allow a single click to get set up and get contributing as a way to solve that configuration problem. And then, of course, we're going to show in some depth the Nuxeo platform example, the way that they're using Codenvy factories to make it easier for developers who want to leverage that Nuxeo platform for their business or their personal use to do it in a very, very simple, very easy way. One of the interesting things about Codenvy is that we use Docker under the hood as the container technology that allows us to support nearly any language, nearly any environment. And so Sun is going to talk us through how Docker is used, what Docker is, why we use it, how we use it, what changes need to be made to a Dockerfile to make it valid for Codenvy. And he'll end off talking a little bit about some of the optimizations you can use for your factories using Docker. About Codenvy, the company was founded in 2013 and is headquartered in San Francisco. We currently have 49 employees and operations in 5 countries. Our products cover the SaaS version, the on-premises version, as well as the factors we'll talk about today. So our primary product being the hosted cloud IDE, connected to that environment configuration, packaging, and running infrastructure set of microservices. We do also are kind of the founders of the Eclipse Che project. So if you go to Eclipse, you can see the Che project there, but it is essentially a kernel and set of libraries for building your own cloud development tooling. It's actually a key component of the Eclipse cloud development top-level project that we are part of, along with SAP, Pivotal, IBM, and others. Currently, there are 360, well, there's actually more than 360,000 projects hosted, run, being developed with Codenvy today. That covers users in over 55 countries, as well as users from 25 of the Fortune 100 companies. There's over 120,000 developers working with Codenvy, so you can see that on average, they're doing about 3 projects each. Some of them, of course, have many more. All right, and now I'm going to pass it over to Vlad so that he can talk to us a little bit about the Nuxeo platform.
Hi everyone, I'm Vladimir Pasquier, so Nuxeo core developer. First of all, thanks for Codenvy for inviting me to this webinar. I'm glad to show you the Codenvy factory of Nuxeo. Just about Nuxeo, so I'm based in Paris, but we have also offices in New York and in Los Gatos in Silicon Valley. So Nuxeo is a open source company who provide a Nuxeo platform, which is a content management system open source in Java. This is a platform for developers to build softwares upon it in order to create applications around content in general. It's highly modular and extensible, so as for Eclipse, it's in OSGI-like system. You can contribute through different extension points and features without modifying any code, existing code. It's on GitHub. It's been there for 5 years old now. And we are focused also on SIS-based tools like Nuxeo Studio, which is a configuration tool in order to configure the platform to do a software without any line of code. And we have also Nuxeo.io, which is our cloud service for running Nuxeo server into the cloud, based on Docker as well. So now I'm just talking about the features. We have the basic features of the content repository. We have security, access control, audit, query. You can attack the repository with query through Elasticsearch, for instance. And we have different kind of file storage. We can use databases, lots of databases, and you can store all the metadata into this. Upon it, we have features like workflow engine in order to managing documents through steps and interacting people between them. We have a conversion kit in order to convert any binary into different formats. We have a Nuxeo client desktop like you have for Dropbox. So you have a client that can sync all your files from your server to your desktop. And we have also different add-ons that we can find on marketplace.nuxeo.com to install on your server. Around this, we have lots of tools in Python, for instance, lots of SDKs and a plugin also in Eclipse to run some Nuxeo bundle. And open updates at last. We have the REST APIs that I'm going to show a little bit after with this factory. So just to finish, in order to explain all the use cases we can have in the next slide, we have so just for the next slide. Yes, thank you. Yes, so we have, for example, in the digital asset management sector, we have JCDecaux or Verizon, which are companies who using Nuxeo for managing their videos, JCDecaux for their advertising system, and Verizon for their video on-demand service. On the business-oriented document repository, so we have an example of Gobalto, which is a pharmaceutical company who deploy regulations of pharmaceutical products with the help of Nuxeo. And at last, workflow, for instance, workflow and case management. We have FICO, who is a software vendor who sell to their customer, thanks to Nuxeo, software to detect fraud in financial transactions. We can talk also about Electronic Arts, who are managing their build of their games with Nuxeo to track the build and for testing purpose. So in their different sites around the world. And Jepsen, which is a Bain company who use Nuxeo for synchronize their documentation for pilots into their cockpit.
Thank you, Vlad. So for talking about why a solution like this is necessary, we begin with kind of the thesis or the assertion that the biggest inhibitor to development productivity today is actually developer environment maintenance. Many of the other challenges that have faced developers in the past have been removed. A lot of language attributes, live update, and things like that have made people much more efficient. But the maintenance of those developer environments has not really changed significantly in the last 10 years. A good example of this is looking at a very kind of simple environment for Java. You take Tomcat, which is a fairly straightforward, open source, simple application server, and you pair it with Eclipse IDE, which is one of the most widely used IDEs. And what you have is these instructions for making those two things work together. So the challenge is fairly clear that there's a lot to do here. And if any one of these components changes, if you move, for example, from Tomcat 7 to Tomcat 8, or if the operating system you're using needs to change because you've added another developer to the team, and instead of running a certain variety of Linux, maybe they're running something different. Maybe they're running Windows. They now need to do this same process, but slightly different to adapt to their changing stack. The reality is that a lot of the modern architectures that people are interested in using today, continuous delivery, microservices, the variety of open source project and containers, all have huge benefits to building large-scale enterprise applications, but each of them individually adds a heavier burden to the development environment configuration. You can see things like microservices, which we use internally to power the Codenvy cloud, and we love them. They're very, they really help us to scale the environment, do cause weight on our configuration. There's increased setup. There are more components that require setup, update, and maintenance. You look at open source, and often the downstream changes there can cause configuration reverberations felt by any application that uses that package. And that's something that's probably familiar to most of the people on the call. So each of these really adds a configuration complexity cost to the application. And the more modern architectures we use, the higher that configuration cost. The more people on our development team, the higher the configuration cost. the more variety of platforms that I need to support, the higher the configuration cost. So you start getting this exponential growth in the complexity of managing those environments. When you look at that old way of going to an open source project or just starting on a new project that isn't open source, having to have that wiki page, going through the wiki page, following the steps, maintaining the wiki page, making sure that everybody's done their upgrades at the same time. That manual approach takes hours, sometimes days. We've spoken to several customers for whom bringing on a new developer is a 3 or 4 day process to get all of the systems connected for them properly on their new laptop so that they can begin contributing to the team. The goal of the Codenvy factory, and I think what we're going to show you with the Nuxeo platform, which is in itself, as you saw, as Vlad said, a very rich, very powerful, multifaceted, complex platform, is reducing that to be a single click. No matter how complex it is, no matter how many elements in that stack, Codenvy can still package it such that it can be handed to somebody as a single URL that they click on, that gives them instance access to that pre-configured environment, pre-configured for its builder, pre-configured for its runner, for the IDE policies, and for anything else. So that a developer can immediately view the code, modify it, build it, debug it, and run it without installing anything, which means that they can work from their laptop. They can work from their home computer. They could work from an internet cafe. They could work from a mobile device. If I personally can't imagine coding on a phone, but I guess if you wanted to code on a phone, you could certainly do that. So what does a factory provide you, or how does it benefit? So other than this instant availability, there's a lot of other kind of nice features, and I think you'll see some of them in this Nuxeo factory. It takes advantage of some of these in a really, really clever way. You can use any sources. You can start from Git, you can start from Bitbucket, whatever you want. And you can build any type of project. Because we use Docker, and we'll get to the Docker aspect a little later, we're able to build and run any Linux environment. We've also added in hooks to allow you to do post-processing action. This is something you'll see, the ability to open a file by default when somebody enters that editor. The ability to open a welcome panel to provide contextual information about the project, maybe provide them links to documentation, provide them links to help, to support. We've talked about the factory button, and the last part, which you'll see as well in the Nuxeo factory, is our new guided tour. And this is, I think, a really powerful way to smooth that onboarding process, whether it's for people contributing to your open source project or people you're adding to your enterprise development team. Whatever the case may be, it's a really nice way to kind of just point out to people, hey, here are the source files for this area or this module, or here's how you run it, or here's where the data source can be found, or don't forget you can do this. You can kind of put any of those things in that may make sense to help get that user from interested to engaged. The last nice thing is that for when you create a factory and you pass that URL to somebody else, they don't need a Codenvy account. When they click on that factory URL from Codenvy, it instantly drops them into a temporary workspace with no account required. Now, if they want to persist what they do need a Codenvy account, and they can sign up for free. But it is nice to be able to allow people into your project without forcing them through any sign-up procedure. It really does ease their way in, and that's been the goal. Creating a Codenvy factory is very simple. You basically import your project into Codenvy, you get it all running, which in itself is fairly easy, and then the factory configuration files can be exported from that running factory. If you want to do some advanced things like the guided tours, custom Docker files, then you can edit the configuration files, which come with Codenvy. They're JSON. They're very readable, very straightforward. We're actually going to show you examples in the webinar here. And then you'll see as well how you just create the factory and the magic URL using either the UI or our command line interface.
Just to begin, wanted to explain why we are very interested by Codenvy on Nuxeo side. Is that we have a bunch of tools in the cloud, like the Nuxeo Studio, the Nuxeo IO, and all of these tools are tools to configure the platform. And of course, we have some plugin for IDE like IntelliJ or Eclipse, but we were very interesting to the fact to have everything and every developer tools in the cloud. So our first goal was to say, okay, we're going to begin by the factory, because all the factory provide lots of features that you can instantaneously get in order to run a bundle, so jar or project, into an Nuxeo server quickly. So just in order to explain the big picture of the factory process, is you have a factory.json that I'm going to show that gathers all the information you need, like the project template that you're going to fetch from a GitHub repository, the Dockerfile that is going to deploy and run your custom server into Codenvy infrastructure. And you're going to have also other tools like a Gade tool that I'm going to present, and a welcome panel. And so this is some pedagogical tools in order to welcome the user when he's entering into the factory. And also a generic parameter. I'm not going to expand on that subject, but you can also genericalize the factory itself. So you can pass some different parameter each time you want to generate a new link, and play with this link, with this parameter, to inject some data into codes, into files, into lots of things. So the first step is to do this factory.json. After that, to push this factory to the Codenvy API server, and you're going to have a link in return to access to the factory. So I'm just going to show you the factory.json. So it's not quite a big file. In fact, it's just this kind of file. You can see I'm going just to sum up all the parts of the factory. So you have the creator, so you have the credentials in order to generate this link. You have all the properties of the project, like if you want to set the visibility to private or public, if you want different builder like Maven or other. You're going to specify your runner. So the runner is, we're going to see that with Sun after that with the Docker infrastructure, in order to customize your custom server. And you can also add some description, set the type of the project, like the language is Java, the type is Maven, and you're going to add lots of pedagogical tool like the Codenvy guided tool, or a welcome template that is just a HTML file. I'm going to show you. Here we can see how to set the repository, the location on GitHub of your project to import. So you can choose also the branch of this project. So it's very, very useful. And at last, you can define some actions. So if you enter into the factory, you're going to decide if you want to open a file, to run a server, to add some generic parameters. So this is very, very efficient to do lots of things when entering into the factory. Well, I'm going to show you the factory, so you can see on the slide after the link is noticed. So when entering into the factory, you can see different parts of the Codenvy UI. So on the right, we have a welcome panel that I talked about. So it's just a pure HTML file where you can put some images or links, especially links to access to documentation, to explain all the Nuxeo API, for instance. We can see in the bottom of the screen the console, who is going to sum up. For instance, here he has built my project with Maven. We can see on the left the structure of the project. This is a typical Maven project. It's like we do for creating a bundle of Nuxeo. And of course, we have the center of the screen, which is Java class, which is open already. So we have this other pedagogical tool, which is the guided tool. So you can put some information and specify which area you would like to explain. So it's very, very useful to be pedagogic on this welcome presentation. And also, when you click, you can also, next, you can also define other actions. So for instance, I have explained that this green arrow was the button to execute the server. After clicking on next, I can interact very quickly with the user by triggering some actions. So here I'm triggering the deploying of the project of Nuxeo server, and I can put like useful information like the default credentials that we are all looking at each time that we have different server, we have to see the default credentials into the documentation. So here you have it right away into the guided tool. So just about the guided tool, and I'm going to let this server running. It's just about to, sorry for that. In the factory, if I come back to the factory, you see the guided tool is just an attribute with the location on GitHub or here on Rogit. So this is another JSON descriptor. And this JSON descriptor is sum up some steps. So each bubble is a step describing by this JSON file. And in this JSON, you can define the content, the title. You can place the bubble wherever you want into the UI of Codenvy. So basically, this is just you have to set the ID of the component of the UI of Codenvy. So it's very, very quick to do it. I made it very, very quickly. And you can define also actions. You can also modify the button, create new buttons, and there's for sure lots of other features to have after. So here, for instance, I have opened the file sample operation. Here there's no action, but here when I clicked on the next, it was just this action. So this is the main key, trigger Wrapup. So trigger Wrapup has executed the command to run Nuxeo server. So back to this project. So we're seeing, I'm going to skip the bubble. We're seeing some this Java class. So it's related to Nuxeo system. I'm going to show you a feature that we have in Nuxeo, which is called automation. And automation, in order to sum up very quickly, not to be too expand on this, is simply, it's like automata in macOS. So you have, you can chain some different atomic operation. Each operation is described by Java class. And so you're not, don't pay attention around this this area. It's just in order to explain the stack of automation. So the idea of Nuxeo automation is just to chain some different operation to do some actions. So here I have fetch a document. I get a document file. I would like to convert it, for instance, in PDF, and then I would like to download it through a web browser, for instance. So this, why automation is very important for Nuxeo as well, is that it's also some endpoints. So you can access to this chain through the UI, through the REST API, and through API in general. So it was a good example to start to see the different things that we can do with Codenvy. So I see that I'm going to, yeah, we have to stop the server. I don't know what is going on. I'm going to refresh it.
Yeah,
maybe it was my old instance. So I'm going to skip this. So okay, we're going to see how to create the Dockerfile and all the different features in order to run this the steps. First of all, when you run the server, the project is compiled. So We have to wait a little bit, and after that, the server is deployed through the Docker system. So once my server is going to be run, yes, in the meantime, we can wait about that. Just about how to generate the factory, just before in my big picture. So Codenvy provides also a panel in order to manage all your factory that you have generated and also to create new one. So I did that with some command lines to do it, but now Codenvy provides this panel in order to, for example, you can create with some template or a complete one, create and generate your factory. So you have just to put your JSON into this through the console of Codenvy, and you will get your URL instantaneously. So this is kind of tools that are very, very useful in order to generate this URL. So now I have for sure my server started. Just waiting for the URL. And yes. So here I've got a new URL generated by Codenvy, who has loaded a Nuxeo 6.0 server. Just in order to show you if my bundle has been well deployed, I can see if my sample operation that is here, that is just an atomic operation, so just a Java class, has been contributed to the Nuxeo. So through a different URL, I can find if my sample operation has been set, and this is the case. Here's my sample operation. So we're going to just modify quickly, just before seeing the Docker features, how to just modify it and see how can I attack this server through API, REST API. So it's just a little example. We're going to display into the console some hello world, and then we are going to return a root document of the Nuxeo. So this is the slash, and it's just in order to be quick. I'm going to just to change the description, so sample operation from Nuxeo and Codenvy webinar, and the sample operation. So I don't want to have any input because I just want to display some things and to display also the JSON of this document through REST API. So restart the server, and he has to recompile so the project, then copy it to the container of Nuxeo. And with some REST client, I'm going to attack this server and to see if my hello world is well displayed into the console, and if I retrieve well the JSON document of this root document. So, which is very, very nice also with this new panel is that you can also, if you want to change to update your factory.json, you have to regenerate the link each time. And with this panel, you can also edit different information into the factory.json without any regenerating the factory. This is kind of feature that is very, very useful.
One other thing to mention, Vlad, is that the runner URL, when you'd shown the running Nuxeo app, that runner URL is, of course, also shareable. So that's a particular instance of the running app that is unique to your temporary project here, since you're in a temporary workspace, as you can see from the lower left. But if you were on a team and you wanted to show somebody kind of what you'd done, maybe you were having a problem and you wanted to get somebody to collaborate on it, you could send them either the whole link to the project if you wanted to allow them to edit it, or just a link to the runner itself. And the Codenvy runner, then they could run the app, they could see if they're seeing the same things you're seeing. So it's kind of a nice ability to share either just the running artifact or the IDE itself as well.
So here I have my new Nuxeo well deployed with the new updates that I made. And I'm going just with Postman plugin to attack by REST API this sample operation that I've done. So here normally I'm going to have the JSON definition of this root document that I have returned, and also, so this is the JSON, typical JSON description of a Nuxeo document, and also hello world, if you can see, it's very small, maybe with this resolution, and a hello world. So I will deploy this update into my Nuxeo, and I did a REST point on this. So you will, if you go to this factory, and if you want to contribute to automation to see how to customize this kind of operation, because you can do lots of things like this, you will see on the right in the welcome panel or in the tour guide lots of links about how to do an operation, how Nuxeo is working for automation in general. That's it for now. So we can see maybe after that the Docker system of Codenvy.
Okay, so Docker is it's a virtual machine, pretty much like you may know VMware or VirtualBox. The only difference is like it's very light. It's very light because it's using the resources of the machine. For instance, the virtual machine, we use the RAM of the host machine. It will use the CPU of the host machine and the network resources as well. So there is no emulation. Everything will be executed like it was in the host machine. The thing is, it's a virtual machine, so every runners are isolated. So that means that every virtual machine won't see the processes and the RAM usage of the other mesh runners. So every runners are isolated. And the nice nice thing is that you can customize your images. So if you take the example of VirtualBox, it's an ISO image, whereas in Docker we have recipes scripts where you are going to describe how you create the images. So the nice thing with these recipes is that you can share these images very easily without sharing the ISO image, which can be quite big. So sharing a script file is much more lighter than sharing the whole image. And this is why in Codenvy we use Docker, because we provide Docker scripts, Docker files, so you can execute a Tomcat server with a database, etc. And you can easily share these images. And of course, you can customize these images. So that is the points in Codenvy. This is what we the feature that we provide for the runners. So running the factory well is going to clone again the JSON, the GitHub project. It will build it, and if I go into project configuration, you can see that by default it will you can choose if you want which runner you want to use. So we provide default runners to run a lot of environments. So, but if you want to create your own runner environment, what you can do is go to run with and edit custom environments, and you can customize your Dockerfile. And that is what will be used when you click on run. So for instance here, so I'm going to quickly describe the file. So this is a standard Dockerfile. The from keyword is for reusing another images. So this is one of the nice feature with Docker. You can reuse existing images. So for instance, here we are using Docker images that is provided by Nuxeo. That is hosted on Docker Hub. That's so these images itself use reuse another images or existing images. Wait. Go back to edit. So then with the keyword, you can define some environment variable that will be used in the Docker image. For instance, here, Codenvy app binder, we set the variable, the value temp application, and that will be used in the end of the in the command, for instance. Here will be reused. So here we have this environment variable it's a special environment variable that is used for copying the result of the build of the projects. So when we define these environments, Codenvy at the end, we copy the result of the build, so it's going to be a jar file, into that folder. So when we are going to run the application at the end, what we can do is copy the jar file into the right plugins folder for Nuxeo and restart the server. So the run keyword is for running Unix command line. So for instance, here we create a folder for the where we want to store the result of the build, and here we're creating the plugins folder in the Nuxeo server, so we can copy the plugins in there. And finally, the command keyword in Docker is to start the application. So this is, you can have only one per Dockerfile, and this is what is going to be launched at the end. So that's all for the presentation of the Dockerfile.
Sun, did you want to show the base Docker file?
Yes. So the base Dockerfile is based on the Nuxeo
yes,
images.
We use also Docker technology to build our cloud infrastructure. So we have mutualized the different sources in order to use it into Nuxeo.io and to Codenvy. So we have another account in k.io, which is Docker Hub-like. And so we have built this isolated image for the Codenvy purpose.
So this in this Docker image, I'm going to run it, show you later. Yes, in this Docker image, we do a setup. We do download the Nuxeo server. We unzip it, and then we expose the Nuxeo port. So it's 8080. It's a Tomcat port.
Yeah, and after that, this is some kind of custom configuration of the Nuxeo platform. But the main subject was to expose this port through this kind of global environment and this command.
Yeah, and after that, what we are doing is setting up shell in the box. So shell in the box is not in by default in the Nuxeo images, but it is used by Codenvy to let you access to the terminal. So, for instance, if I click on the terminal here, this is what it is for. So we can just access to the terminal and write some commands, for instance, blah, blah, blah. So we could have copied all the scripts in one Dockerfile, but we by creating an images that can be reusable, we speed the loading of the Docker images at the end. So at the end, by uploading the Docker image, pre-configured Docker images in Docker Hub, it's really speed up the starting up of the application.
And I think that's an important piece of advice for people who are building factories, especially for, a small group project or something you're working on your own. It's really not necessary to go through these steps, but as you begin looking at building a factory to encourage people to engage with, contribute to your open source project, for example, going and doing these extra few steps to compress the images, to get rid of intermediate images, to make sure that you are putting as much as possible into that pre-built image and forcing as little as possible into the dynamic generation that will happen for each user is a really good way to make sure that you have a highly responsive, very kind of quick loading project for folks, even when it is a really, really big one like the Nuxeo platform. All right, so what sorry, go ahead.
Yes, no, it was just to add that the usage of Codenvy, for Nuxeo, so for now we're in an experienced state, but we would like to begin with, we do lots of training along the year in the United States and in Europe, and it's true that training is very complicated to handle because lots of trainees have different operating systems and different environments, and with Codenvy you can gain lots of time of setting everything on your laptop and focus on the main subject, which is the training of the technology that you have. So this is certainly the first step that we are going to do with Codenvy, is to use it through our training along the time.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. So as you can see, I think that's a really good introduction to this last little slide here before we move on to questions. Factories really do present endless possibilities. We talked a little bit today about how you can use them to let people instantly code review and run your particular project, do the building of extensions or plugins. We talked about training sessions, but live tutorials, the ability, imagine if you're in QA, let's say, or even in development, and you're building something, you notice a bug. What you can do with Codenvy that you really probably can't do today is kind of essentially take and factoryitize a particular configuration of your app, a particular configuration of the environment, package that up as a single URL and say, hey, I found a weird interaction with my app. Can somebody look at this? Tell me what you think. And people can then jump in. They can see the interaction live because it's all been saved in the state of the environment and the code. And then they can jump in the code as well and look and maybe try and understand, why is this behaving differently with this environment than it does with others. Of course, being able to really have these environments set up specifically for, let's say, your early development, your kind of mid-stage integration testing. Perhaps you're using a number of APIs, and then your later stage scale testing. You can do all that and get that all set up within Codenvy as well. So lots and lots of things you can do with factories, and we have customers doing a little bit of all of these, which is really, really interesting. All right, so thank you very much, everyone. I want to remind everybody that we are here and happy to answer questions. We've got a few minutes left. I unfortunately can't unmute the phone lines the way the webinar is set up, but in your GoToWebinar control panel near the bottom, you should see a panel that you can open up called Questions. If you type your questions in there, then myself and Vlad and Sun will be able to see those, and we can answer them that way. So again, apologies for not being able to have a more natural dialogue, but we're happy to answer any questions you do have now. Right, well, we'll hold on for a little bit in case there are more questions, but if there aren't, then this is the wrap up then. Thank you very, very much for your time today. We really, really appreciate it. And remember, you can sign up for a free account at codenvy.com. You can start trying the factories for yourself. You can start playing with your own projects, which you can import from your file system, from GitHub, from Bitbucket. Jump over to Nuxeo, try that factory and take a look at their platform. It's really quite amazing how much you can do with that automation layer. It's very, very cool.